The moment I stepped into my new workplace, I felt like I was in a completely different world. My name is Tom Yates, and I'm 32. I recently switched jobs to a game development company as a programmer. Originally, I was working elsewhere, but due to certain circumstances, I ended up transferring here. I didn't really have a choice in the matter, but on my first day, I honestly regretted coming. One reason was that there were quite a few people who seemed to have it out for me, a mid-career hire. Currently, I'm troubled by the presence of my colleague, Linda. She is 2 years younger than me, at 30. If she stays silent, she's remarkably attractive, with the facial features and body figure of a model. I was surprised to find out she's also a programmer like me. I had assumed she worked in a more public-facing role, like public relations. Essentially, she's my direct senior. Linda seems to have an unusual animosity towards male colleagues. She might have had some difficult experiences in the past, but that has nothing to do with me. Yet, Linda's anger and irritation are currently directed straight at me. It's an utterly unreasonable situation. Thinking I shouldn't have come is understandable under these circumstances. Don't just stand there daydreaming. You're not expecting someone to bring you coffee as soon as you sit at your desk in the morning, are you? This morning, as soon as I arrived at my desk, Linda snapped at me. The worst part is that Linda's seat is right next to mine. I don't think that at all. I replied lightly, and Linda snorted in dissatisfaction. Instead of starting her own work, she kept watching my every move. This happens every morning. Looking for mistakes, nitpicking. Even if it's not a mistake, or if it's not done her way, she exaggerates and gossips to everyone. Because of Linda, I seem to have been labeled as the incompetent team member in this workplace. I'm stuck doing menial tasks and running errands every day. The person who brought me to this company was my middle school friend, Nathan Carter. We went to different colleges, so I don't know how Nathan spent his university days. He founded this game company during his college years and has been here ever since. The first time we got back in touch after a long while was 6 months ago. He asked for my help to improve the quality of the programming team. I joined this company, intending to lend a hand for Nathan's sake. I told Nathan not to give me any special treatment when I joined, because I wanted to interact with my colleagues without any preconceptions. However, Linda has significantly derailed that plan. I'm racking my brain about what to do next. Everyone was saying President Carter poached you from another company, so we were all expecting some kind of genius to show up. But what we got was just an errand runner. Huh? Linda deliberately spoke to me in a loud voice, making sure others could hear. It was obvious to anyone that she was speaking loudly so that the other colleagues could hear her. Responding in anger would be childish. I've decided to ignore Linda's remarks, but her persistence in picking on me is truly relentless. Are you ignoring me? I'm talking to you, Tom. I might be younger, but in this company, I'm your senior. A little respect wouldn't hurt, she said, annoyingly. This must be what they call an annoying nag. I just smiled slightly at Linda and continued to ignore her. As if nothing had happened, I turned on my computer and started my day's work. You better take your work seriously. You'll never catch up to us otherwise, Linda said, sensing my lack of response, and then she left her seat. Finally, I can work in peace. I sighed a small sigh of relief. Hey, you look down, Nathan said. After enduring Linda's sarcasm all day, I was completely drained by the evening. Even though I was out for dinner with Nathan for the first time in a while, I seemed to be lost in thought. Did I look that way? Just a bit tired, I replied. Maybe you're just not used to the air in America anymore, Nathan said with a meaningful smile. From his expression, I could tell he was still holding on to the fact that I had quietly applied to and attended a university abroad. What's with that tone? You still holding a grudge? I asked. Nathan is usually a straightforward and good guy, but he becomes a different person when this topic comes up. It seems Nathan had his own plans. He wanted us to attend the same university and start a company together. That was Nathan's plan and dream. He should have told me something so important sooner. Expecting someone to read between the lines is not how things work here. I went to a university abroad because I wanted to experience something new. I always felt that I fit in better abroad than in America. I'm not very attuned to the subtle emotions of others, so that's what I thought vaguely. But there's another reason I've never told anyone. Because you went abroad for university. My startup was delayed by 2 years, Nathan said, his eyes slightly unfocused from the wine. Hey, aren't you drinking too much? You've never been good with alcohol, I cautioned him as he reached for the wine bottle to refill his empty glass. I only drink like this here. Maybe it's the owner's taste, but the wine and the food are so good that I always end up drinking too much, Nathan said. I couldn't help but agree with Nathan's words. This was the first place Nathan brought me to after I returned to America, and it's a very comfortable place. The creative French cuisine served here is unbelievably delicious. The wine selected to accompany the meal is almost gone from the second bottle. It makes me happy to be praised by Nathan, a young woman's voice said from behind me. Nathan raised his hand slightly towards the owner of the voice. Since I praised you, today's on owner Madison, Nathan joked. The woman laughed from the back of her throat at Nathan's light-hearted comment. A woody fragrance wafted past my nose. Nice to meet you. I'm Chris Madison, the woman said with a smile, peeking at my face. Hearing the name she introduced, I was taken aback. It was because I had seen the name on the contract. Owner Madison is a woman. I had totally assumed it was a man. Surprised too much, my true thoughts accidentally slipped out, and I quickly covered my mouth with both hands. Chris laughed heartily, perhaps finding me amusing. She then pulled up a chair and sat down next to me. It's because my name is Chris. I often get that reaction. Resting her elbows on the table and looking up at me with a mischievous gleam in her eye, she seemed to glare at me playfully. Despite saying she often hears it, she appeared somewhat displeased. But Chris is such a beautiful name for a woman, isn't it? Without any flattery, those words just slipped out. I was surprised at myself. Chris seemed just as surprised, her eyes widening even more. I'm happy even if it's just flattery. Thank you, she said with a smile, looking very attractive to me. Her expressions changed so naturally and sincerely, making her incredibly likable. The one who provided the funds for my startup on a whim was Chris here, so she's also the owner of my company, and she owns this place too, Nathan explained. From Nathan's tone, it seemed Chris was quite the entrepreneur. She must have a knack for business. Yet, she looked younger than us. When Nathan was in college, she might have still been in high school or even in middle school. How she managed to come by enough funds to start a business just like that was a mystery. The mystery only deepened. Don't worry, it's not shady money, Chris said with a chuckle, as if she could read my thoughts. The only thing I've figured out from our first meeting, I said. You've figured out something already, Chris responded, sounding pleased. It made me think she was someone who enjoyed conversation. I've realized you're a woman full of mysteries, I replied. Chris smiled enigmatically at my response. Chris laughed meaningfully at my response. Then, she reached out with her pale hand to the wine glass left on the table. The dim light shone through the red wine, casting a beautiful glow on Chris's pale hand. It swayed gently, looking incredibly elegant. I watched Chris slowly take a sip of wine, vaguely aware of my excitement about what she would say next. Men are silly. Women are made of mysteries. A woman who can be fully understood is hardly worth mentioning, she replied. Her response struck a chord with me. After being nagged and criticized all day, I couldn't help but cherish this moment of enjoyable conversation even more. "Hey, am I intruding here?" Nathan interjected, sounding a bit disgruntled, as if he felt left out of the conversation between Chris and me. "Are we being a bother?" "Maybe we are," we both responded, causing Nathan to let out an exasperated hey. Unbeknownst to the tipsy Nathan, Chris had discreetly passed me her private phone number as we were leaving. Even after such a wonderful encounter, the same dreary morning awaited the next day. Fortunately, I've always had a strong tolerance for alcohol and have never experienced a hangover. Nathan, who arrived at work a few minutes after me, looked terrible and was slumped over his desk in distress. "You drank too much," I told him, placing some hangover medicine and a bottle of mineral water on his desk. With a hoarse voice from the alcohol, Nathan slowly took the medicine, saying, "My bad," as he did so. "I'd hate to call it a favor, but I'm looking for some information," I said to Nathan, who had just chugged down 500 milliliters of water and was catching his breath. "I can give you any information about Chris. I've been sworn to secrecy," Nathan replied, prompting me to click my tongue in frustration. It seems Chris got ahead of me. Now, figuring out how to approach this situation becomes a troubling dilemma. Nathan is the only reliable source of information I have at the moment. President Carter, hungover again, Linda interjected between Nathan and me. Although Nathan's title is president, his desk is on the same floor as ours. A consideration to make it easier for employees to consult with him. This makes the hierarchical barrier feel lower compared to other companies. Perhaps that's why Linda often talks to Nathan, the president, in a casual manner. "Should I go buy you some hangover medicine again? Do you need some energy drinks and water as well?" It must be a common occurrence for Nathan to be down with a hangover. Holding her cute pink wallet in both hands, Linda spoke to Nathan with an exasperated look. "I always feel bad for this, but from today, I'll be fine. I've got my wife here to look after me," Nathan said, pointing in my direction. Back when we used to hang out together, it was always Nathan who got into trouble, and it was my job to clean up after him. I was reminded of how I used to be called his wife. Sure enough, I had unconsciously bought hangover medicine, prepared mineral water, and even vegetable soup. Linda, who sharply noticed these items lined up on the desk, glared at me resentfully. That expression made me realize her cold attitude towards me might also have something to do with Nathan's presence. "So I'm unnecessary, then. Since I'm not useful for the work, I guess I'll just cover for you with errands," Linda said, folding her arms in front of her chest. Her posture made it clear that she was completely shutting me out. "Well, the underling should learn by watching my work and pick up the skills," Linda said condescendingly, and Nathan looked up at me as if he wanted to say something. I just shook my head slightly in response to his gaze. "I'm always learning from you," I replied with a smile. Feeling that her sarcasm wasn't getting through, Linda clicked her tongue softly and walked away from Nathan's desk. As I watched her retreating figure, Nathan asked, "Is that okay with you?" "For now, it's fine. I have my own plans," I reassured him. Nathan must have felt something, seeing his close friend belittled in front of him. But revealing my true intentions isn't timely yet. I was called back by Nathan to grasp the situation within the company and the technical capabilities to root out any bad elements. I had intended to observe for a while, but circumstances didn't allow for that. The incident began with a phone call. I was the one who answered it. Before I could even mention the company's name, I was yelled at, nearly damaging my eardrum. The caller was that angry. It was from Director Smith, a longtime client to whom we had just delivered a program. Normally very calm, the call from Director Smith was unexpected. I managed to calm him down and listen as he explained that the program we delivered had a significant bug and that a part we had discussed changing during the specification meeting hadn't been altered at all in the delivered product. While listening, I operated the computer to check who was in charge of the project. It was a job handled by Linda's team. Glancing at Linda in shock, I could tell she must have heard the shouting through the receiver, as she was looking at me with a pale face. The client urgently requested a correction, with delivery by tomorrow. Unfortunately, Nathan was out on field work with a sales team. The atmosphere was too tense to even put the client on hold and check with Linda. Understood. We'll start the corrections immediately, I said before hanging up. Linda rushed over to me after I put down the receiver. Don't just accept it on your own. There's no way we can meet a deadline by tomorrow. If we fail, our reputation will plummet. Linda's face was pale as she continued to berate me. It seemed like she was maintaining her emotional balance by berating someone else. That's the impression I got. But this is work. There's no room for shifting blame or making excuses. Weren't you the project leader? How do you plan to resolve this? I asked, looking straight into Linda's eyes. She seemed a bit intimidated by my intensity and took a step back. But Linda isn't the type to back down. She quickly regained her composure and yelled back at me. As a project leader, I've estimated it will take several days to fix. Are you holding a grudge against me by promising delivery by tomorrow? Her forcefulness left me breathless. The client seemed to have no time to wait for several days. Bugs are one thing, but a mistake in the specification changes is inexcusable. It's evidence that the project team's coordination was poor. I counted, and Linda bit her lower lip, unable to respond. She must be aware of it herself. We need to address this urgently. If there's anything I can help with, just let me know. What can you do? All you've been good for is errands, like some decorative piece. Linda dismissed my offer, her face still pale as she gave a mocking smile. She seemed intent on belittling me at every turn. Just as I was about to protest, a voice cut in, stealing my line. Well, it's a big mistake, but with Tom here, we'll be fine. I'm glad to have a genius programmer with us. I'm counting on you. It must have been a direct complaint from the client. Chris then appeared in the office. Owner Madison's arrival instantly heightened the tension in the room. Following Chris, Nathan hurried back from his field work. Owner Madison, with all due respect, what makes this man a genius programmer? He hasn't been of any use since he joined until today. Linda spoke to Chris with a tone of mockery. Why don't you see for yourself from now on? At Chris's cue, Nathan started giving orders. He instructed that the program data be handed over to me immediately, and Linda resisted with a shocked expression. President Carter, are you serious? Letting Tom handle the correction instead of me? He won't solve it even if he had a month, Linda protested vehemently. Nathan dismissed her with it's an executive order. With the president's command, Linda had no choice but to comply. Reluctantly, she sent me the data. The mistake in the specification change was a simple communication error, a clear human error. This is something we'll need to improve going forward. I reviewed a program data that arrived. It was likely constructed by Linda. A feminine, beautiful, and flexible program. But within it was an anomaly that seemed to have been intentionally inserted. This I could quickly locate and correct. We can meet the deadline by tomorrow. Please review the changed specifications. Without taking my eyes off the screen, I addressed Linda in that manner. My fingers continued to glide across the keyboard. Linda, who had inhaled sharply as if to defy my words, stopped in her tracks as she watched the code flow on my screen. Overwhelmed by the program I was writing, she kept repeating, "How can this be?" in a faint voice. Why, that's a silly question. Didn't they say they hired a genius programmer? Chris said to Linda, who was taken aback. Then, in a voice loud enough for the other employees to hear, Chris spoke about my background at a major IT company abroad and how I was recruited to improve the current internal situation. I've been hearing about the recent state of affairs inside the company from Nathan. Too many are sitting comfortably at the top, lacking humility and meticulousness in their work. I don't want to invest in a company with such employees. I want Tom to clean house. That's what I'm thinking, Chris said, causing more than one or two faces to change color. This deliberate bug was probably set up by someone to frame Linda. Although Linda has her issues personality-wise, her skill as a programmer is on par with Nathan's. My assessment was that she wouldn't normally make such a mistake. I'll provide the funds. Please resolve this issue promptly, Chris said that, patted Linda on the shoulder, and left the office. She probably went to see the client. Linda, please help me. It's difficult for me to meet the deadline alone, I said to Linda, who was still in a daze. Startled by my words, Linda snapped back to reality. Reluctantly, she sat down beside me and began to work. And she said thank you in a soft voice. It was a voice only I could hear, but I'm sure that's what she said. It turned out to be an all-night effort, but by the time the morning sun rose, we had corrected both the bug and the specification changes. I believe the speed was unparalleled by other companies. My eyes were sore, and my shoulders felt as stiff as steel. You did well. We made it in time. I knew I could count on you, Nathan said, offering me an energy drink. He, too, had bags under his eyes. While we were making the corrections, Nathan had identified and decided on a punishment for the person who had planted the bug. The culprit was a mid-level male employee who was jealous of Linda's advancement. Originally Linda's mentor, he couldn't accept being surpassed in skill and position by his protege. Jealousy is an ugly thing, no matter how you look at it. Did you talk to him about leaving? I asked about the punishment. Nathan nodded quietly. I see. It was evident from his expression that it was a difficult decision for the compassionate Nathan. President Carter, would you like some coffee? Linda offered coffee to the tired Nathan with gentleness. Nathan happily accepted it. Then, without a word, Linda also offered me a cup of coffee. I accepted it with a wry smile, and for once, her usually cheeky eyes softened with a smile. I wish I had a partner who could offer me coffee when I'm tired like this. I'd eased her, and Linda's ears turned red. Don't expect that from Chris. She's useless for anything but making money, Nathan said about owner Madison, but it wasn't meant as an insult. It was clear from his affectionate tone. During the all-nighter, Chris called a few times. She was entertaining the client at that wine place, keeping them in good spirits. Thanks to her, we weren't rushed or disturbed by complaints during our work. It was truly a relief. It's finished, you say. Congratulations. I've finished up on my end too and tossed everything into a taxi. Chris entered the office, seemingly a bit tipsy, her steps uncertain. She handed me a sandwich made by the chef of that restaurant, saying it was a treat. It seems there's soup inside the thermos, which retains heat well. It was a welcome provision for our tired bodies. Looks like you were drinking until just now, huh? All I can do is entertain and spend money to make sure no one complains. Chris laughed, claiming she had no other talents. But thanks to this talent, I was able to forcefully draw my destiny towards me, she said with a smile directed at me. Caught off guard by her sudden remark, all I could do was look puzzled. Linda, intrigued, jumped into the conversation. Are you talking about Tom as your destined partner? Huh? This was news to me as well. Look at Tom's face. He looks like a pigeon that's been shot with a bean. Chris laughed, holding her stomach as she looked at me. What does that mean? With a sly smile, Chris whispered, it's a secret until you remember, and placed her index finger over her lips. After the delivery in the afternoon, I was exhausted and fell asleep in the rest area, where I dreamt for the first time about the day I was leaving for abroad. A girl with a mature face crossed in front of me, being seen off by my parents. Her slender chin and porcelain-like pale skin caught my eye. Then, the girl looked at me and smiled faintly. Do I have enough value to be gazed at like this? Caught off guard by her question, I apologized for staring rudely. Then, I responded, I think you're definitely worth admiring. Thank you, that gives me confidence, she said, sitting down beside me with a thud. Then, she expressed a desire to know more about me. In the short time before boarding, I believe we talked about each other. I was heading to Oxford University, and she was going to England to learn about her grandfather's business in the financial district, as I recall. I want to live surrounded by things I love, doing what I love, she laughed, stating her only wish. When the boarding announcement came, she stood up and stared at my face. Then she said, I appoint you as my destined person. I've decided now that you, who called me beautiful, are my goal. Be prepared. The face of the girl who laughed mischievously overlapped with Chris's as I woke up. Yes, good morning. I startled as Chris's voice came from right beside me. Did you remember anything about me? It was quite a task to find you. Really? Were you looking for me? My question came out awkwardly, overwhelmed by surprise. Oh yes, I spent a fortune hiring 6 detectives. All I had was information about Oxford University. Chris laughed, then confided in me about her next plan. The second phase of the plan is to make you fall in love with me. She said this with a serious face, even though that stage had long been surpassed. How should I convey this fact to her? What kind of expression would she have when I tell her? Excited, I carefully chose my words, hoping they would be the best possible answer for her.